Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the stream for today. Just going to post on Twitter that we're live. All right, we tweeted. That's good. Now we need to get some questions set up here. So we're just going to do some SAT math practice questions and work through those because those are good for me to get my name out there to start. Pretty broad subject matter, and if you come on in here you can kind of see how I work on some questions. So we'll go with the same practice test we were working on yesterday, and we'll just continue from where we left off. And if you have any math questions, you can go ahead and ask them in the chat, or you can DM me on Twitter, so that way I can see your questions and I'd be happy to help you out with any specific questions that you have. Alright, I'm just trying to find the test where I was. We're on the part with no calculator. Okay, and we ended on question number 10. We'll pull the answers up here. And then we'll get started. Let's pop this out. We'll get it so that way you all can see the questions this time. All right. Okay, let's get started on these questions. And I will do my best to be paying attention to the chat. All right, here we go. In the equation above, B and C represent the price per pound in dollars of beef and chicken, respectively, X weeks after July 1st during last summer. What was the price per pound of beef when it was equal to the price per pound of chicken? So we have two equations here, one representing the price of beef and one representing the price of chicken. And so let's write down our two equations. B equals 2.35 plus 0.25x. I'm going to just drag this into here so it's easier to switch. 2.35 plus 0.25x and the price of chicken is equal to 1.75 plus 0.4x. 1.75 plus 0.4x. Now, can you all see this when this is pulled up here? Okay, good. We can see it now. So it says, what was the price per pound of beef when it was equal to the price per pound of chicken? So in that question right there, it tells us exactly what to do. It says when it was equal to the price per pound of chicken. So we want to set the price of beef equal to the price of chicken. So that means that B is going to equal C. So that means that we can set the right-hand side of these equal signs equal to each other. So we're going to have 2.35 plus 0.25x equals 1.75 plus 0.4x. And now we want to solve for x. So let's try and keep x positive, because then we won't have to deal with any negative numbers. So let's subtract 0.25x from this side and from this side as well, 0.25x for 0. Because 0.25 is smaller than 0.4, so that will mean that it will stay positive over here. 0.4x plus 1.75 equals, this cancels out, 2.35. Alright, so our next step is we'll subtract 1.75 from both sides. That'll cancel out, and we'll be left with 0.6 equals 0.4x. And then we'll divide both sides by 0.4, and we will get x equals 1.5. So now we have solved for x. Are we done? I don't think so, because it says what was the price per pound of beef when it was equal to the price per pound of chicken. And you can see that our answer was 1.5, and none of these answers are that. So we need to plug x into the equation and solve for the price of beef. So let's substitute 1.5 in here. So we'll get 2.35 plus 0.25 times 1.5, and that will give us the price of beef. So 0.25 times 1.5, I believe, is 0.375. 1.5 times 0.25, 0.375, plus 235. And if we add those two together, we're going to get 272.5, and we'll probably round that up to $2.73. Did I make an error in my math? Let's double check that. 0.375 plus 2.35 is 2.725273. So our answer is not correct. So math part, no calculator. Question 11. What was the price per pound of beef when it was equal to the price per pound of chicken? Well, let's go back to our equation and make sure that we solved it correctly. No, okay, I see our error where we made an error. It's all the way back here. And I did 0.4x minus 0.25 is 0.4, and that's incorrect. So let's go back to the beginning, because making that one small math error made our entire problem incorrect. Okay, so let's start over with our two equations here. B equals 2.35 plus 0.25x, and chicken equals, I know that this is 0.4x. What's this one? It is 1.75. Okay, so we do want to set them equal to each other like we did last time. 2.35 plus 0.25x equals 1.75 plus 0.4x. So I'm going to subtract 0.25x from both sides, and I'm going to get 0.15x, which is where I made a mistake last time. Then let's subtract 1.75 from both sides. I'm going to get 0.6. So our what's left over is 0.6 equals 0.15x. We'll divide both sides by 0.15. We'll get x equals 4. So now it says what's the price of beef when it was equal to chicken. So after 4 weeks in July, their prices were equal. So we're going to substitute 4 up in here for this x. So we'll get 2.35 plus 0.25 times 4. 4 times 0.25 is 1, so we'll get 2.35 plus 1, final answer of $3.35. $3.35 is D. And let's drag the answers over here. So we have those, there we go. And 11, the answer is D. So we got it. So the biggest thing with that problem there is just making sure that you don't make a simple math error. This problem can be very short and done quickly if you can just make sure to do your decimal subtraction correctly. So make sure you double check yourself and that you're not making a simple math error, because like you saw there, I had to redo that whole problem because I made one simple math error at the beginning that I didn't catch. Okay, Next problem, number 12. Let's zoom in here so you guys can read this a little better. A line in the xy plane passes through the origin and has a slope of 1 over 7. Which of the following points lies on the line? 0, 7, 1, 7, 7, 7, or 14, 2. Okay, so let's try and think about this. A line in the xy plane passes through the origin and has a slope of 1 over 7. So what do we need to think about here? We need to think about our slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. And what is our slope-intercept form? It's y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. And then we plug in an x, this is our input, to get our y, our output, which forms our ordered pair, right? X comma y. So for this one, it says it passes through the pen is not working. Sorry about this. Why does this keep stopping working? Okay, there we go. So it says this one passes through 0, 0, and that the slope is 1 over 7. Yep. So if it passes through 0, 0, the y coordinate is 0, and where our line crosses the y-intercept, right here. And the slope is 1 over 7, so 0 is going to be equal to our b, our y-intercept, and our slope is 1 over 7, so that's going to be equal to m. So it looks like our equation is going to be y equals 1 over 7x plus 0, and we can just drop the plus 0, so y equals 1 over 7x. So now we can either make an xy table to get some points, or we can just use the options A, B, C, and D and just go through those and check those. And I think we should just go through A, B, C, D because that's going to be faster. Which of the following points lies on the line? 0, 7. We know that that is not true because the y-intercept is at 0, 0. 1, 7 is not going to be true because if we plug in this, let's plug this point in. Sorry that my board is not working. try this again. I'm really not sure why my board is not working. Okay. Sorry for the delay. So as I was saying, let's try and plug in I think the pen is working now. So our second choice was 1, 7. If we plug in 1 for x, we'll get y equals 1 over 7 times 1, which means that y should equal 1 over 7. And it doesn't. In this case, it equals 7 for that choice. So that point doesn't work. And then 7, 7, if we plug in 7, we're going to do 7 times 1 over 7 equals 7 over 7, which is 1. So 7, 7. We'll do y equals 1 over 7 times 7, which would get us y equals 7 over 7, which is 1, which is not 7, which is what the choice says. So the last one is 14, 2. Y equals 1 over 7 times 14 equals 14 over 7, which is 2, which is what the choice says. So D is the correct answer. And let's go to the answers. D. Perfect. Again, if you have any questions of your own, feel free to ask a question in the chat, and I would love to help you out with your question. Okay, let's erase this. Check the chat real quick. If x is greater than 3, which of the following is equivalent to, if x is greater than 3, which of the following is equivalent to 1 over all of this nonsense. Alright, so in this instance, if I was trying to solve this problem, one over x plus 2 plus 1 over x plus 3. It says if x is greater than 3, which of the following is equivalent? So if x is greater than 3, one possible solution is x equals 4. So let's plug in 4. We get 1 Why does my board just stop working all of a sudden? add a new nib in there. So let's see. There we go. All right. That seems much better. Excellent, back in business now. Start streaming. All right, we are back. So thanks for tuning into the live stream. If you're here, we had some technical difficulties earlier, and I am not going to post that part of the video. So we actually skipped a few questions since the last time we were here, and I'm going to be working on the same SAT practice questions as before, just because it's a broad subject and I'm trying to get my name out there to get people to work with. So we solved problem 11 and 12, and we're on problem 13 now. So let's go. If x is greater than 3, which of the following is equivalent to this? And so if x is greater than 3, then one of the possible solutions has to be 4. So let's take our problem and write it down. 1 over x plus 2 plus 1 over x plus 3. Okay, so if x why did it just stop again? So if x equals 4, then we'll have 1 over 6 plus 1 over 7, common denominator of 42, and we'll have 7 over 42 plus 6 over 42, all that under 1, and then that will end up being 13 over 42 all over 1. To get rid of dividing by a fraction, we'll multiply by the reciprocal. 42 over 13 times 1 is 42 over 13. And we cannot reduce. So that's our answer, 42 over 13. So we're going to want something else to equal 42 over 13. And if you can see, if we plug in 4, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 5 is 13. So that to me is looking like a potential winner right there. So let's write that down. X squared plus 5x plus 6 over 2x plus 5. Yes? Yes. So we'll plug in 4, we'll get 16 plus 20 plus 6 over 8 plus 5. 16 plus 20 is 36. Plus 6 is 42 over 13. And that's a match. So I would say B, final answer. And for 13, B is the answer. Excellent. We got it. Great. Okay, let's get our board cleared. Move on to the next question. 14. If 3x minus y is 12, then what is the value of 8 raised to the power of x divided by 2 to the power of y? Alright, so 3x minus y is 12. Let's write down our information. 3x minus y is 12. And 8, what's 8 to the x over 2 to the y? That's what they asked, right? Yep. Alright. So let's try and think about a solution here that would work. If we multiplied what's a possible solution? Is that all the information we're being given? Two to the 12th power, four to the 4th power, 8 to the 2nd power. The value cannot be determined from the information given. Let's make up our own solution. If x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 0, then we'd have 3 times 4 minus 0 equals 12. 12 minus 0 equals 12. 12 equals 12, so that's a solution that works, 4 and 0. So if we had 8 to the 4th power, let's do a substitution down here, 8 to the 4th power over 2 to the 0 power, anything to the 0 power is 1, so we'd have 8 to the 4th power over 1, which is 8 to the 4th power. Now what actually is 8 to the 4th power? Eight to the 4th power is 4,096. Now is 8 to the 4th power. Oh, we don't have a calculator on this section. My bad, I'm using a calculator. 8 to the 4th power. Is that the same as 2 to the 12th power? 4,096. Okay, so I don't have a good way of explaining this, so let's go to the answer explanations. And let's find out how we're supposed to convert without a calculator, or how they explain it. So they say one approach is to express 8 to the x over 2 to the y so that the numerator and denominator are expressed with the same base. Since 2 and 8 are both powers of 2, substituting 2 to the 3rd in for 8 in the numerator of 8 over x to the y gives 2 to the 3rd x over 2 to the y, which can be rewritten as 2 to the 3 times x. Since the numerator and denominator of 2 to the 3x over 2y have a common base, this expression can be rewritten as 2 to the 3x minus y it is given that 3x minus y equals 12. So one can substitute 12 for the exponent, giving, all right. So let's go back. Oh, sorry, you guys weren't able to see that while I was reading it. Let me put that in the window so that way you guys can see that. Sorry about that. It'll be good to have this window open because after I explain it, we'll go and see the way that it's explained and we'll be able to go through that explanation as well. So what you need to know for this problem is how to manipulate your exponents. So it was 8 to the x over 2 to the y. And when you look at that, you need to say, okay, 8 is 2 to the third power, so let's rewrite that. Because when we have the same base to an exponent, I'm going to be able to take this fraction and turn it into one term. So they now have 2 to the third power is what 8 is equal to, and then that is still raised to the x power over 2 to the y power. Now, when we have something raised to an exponent, our rule is that we multiply those two things together. So that's what they said, and we're going to get 2 to the 3x over 2 to the y. Now, when you have the same base in a division problem, you take the numerator's exponent and you subtract the denominator's exponent. So we'll have 2 to the 3x minus y. And then they told us that 3x minus y is equal to 12. So then I would just say, okay, 3x minus y, let's just substitute 12 in there, 2 to the 12th power, and that is our final answer. Now the way that I did it, where I made up a solution, and I put in 4 and 0, and that worked because 3 times 4 is 12 minus 0 is 12. Then I got 8 to the 4th power over 2 to the 0 power. And that's 8 to the 4th power divided by 1, which was 8 to the 4th power. And without a calculator, like they did, I have 8 to the 4th power, which is not the same form that any of the answers are in. There's 8 squared, but that's not what I have. So I can do what they did if I know how to manipulate exponents, and I can say 8 is equal to 2 to the 3rd power, and that's raised to the 4th power. I just substituted 2 to the 3rd power in for 8. And then when you have a base raised to an exponent raised to an exponent, you multiply these two exponents together to get 2 to the 12th power. So creating a solution works if you know how to manipulate exponents to convert from 8 to the 4th power to 2 to the 12th power. Or manipulating exponents up here works if you were able to substitute 8 as 2 to the 3rd power. So if you're dealing with exponents, what you want to do is have a common base, and converting 8 to 2 to the 3rd power allowed you to have a common base to be able to convert this from a fraction into one single term. All right, let's move on to the next question. No, it's fine. There's plenty of light, so. All right, next question. Next question. If ax plus 2 times bx plus 7 equals 15x squared plus cx plus 14 for all values of x, and a plus b equals 8, what are two possible values for c? Alright, so let's write down our information. Let's get this cleared. Ax plus 2 times bx plus 7 equals 15x squared plus cx plus 14. And they tell us that when a plus b equals 14, right? Was it 15? That was 8, sorry. Is 8. So we need to do the FOIL method here. In order to figure out some possible combinations. And so when we multiply our first terms together, they need to multiply to equal 15x squared. And so two numbers that add to 8 that multiply to equal 15 would be 3 and 5. So 3 and 5. So if a is 3 and b is 5, what we would get is 15x squared is the first. Multiply the outside terms, I'd get plus 21x. Multiply the inside terms, I'd get 10x. And then multiply the last, I'd get 14. 15x squared plus 31x plus 14. Now what if a is 5 and b is 3? Let's multiply the first terms, I'll get 15x squared. Multiply the outers, I'll get 35x. Multiply the inners, I'll get 6x. And multiply the last, and I'll get 14. 15x squared plus 41x plus 14. So the c, that's here, they want to know two possible values for that. So when a was 3 and b was 5, c was equal to this one, 31. And when a was 5 and b was 3, c is equal to that one there, 41. So they asked for two possible answers, 31 and 41, D, for number 15. D is correct. So the biggest thing here is you need to know how to complete the FOIL method for multiplication. And then you also need to be able to know that when your first two terms multiply together, that you need to get this result here. And then you need to brainstorm, all right, what two numbers add up to this number and also multiply to be this number. And then you just had to execute the FOIL method 2 times successfully to get your 31 and your 41. That's it. All right, moving on. So this is short answer. We don't have any more multiple choice now. So it says if t is greater than 0, and t squared minus 4 equals 0. What is the value of t? Now it's very important that they put t is greater than 0 there. I'll show you why in a minute. So they say t is greater than 0 and t squared minus 4 equals 0. So t equals what? So let's solve for t. We'll add 4 to both sides of the equal sign. It will cancel out over here, and this will equal 4. So we'll get t squared equals 4. And then to solve, we take the square root of both sides. Square root of t squared is t, and the square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. And I can prove that to you because negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, and 2 times 2 is 4. So we have to include the positive and the negative number as possible solutions, but they told us t is greater than 0, so we don't need the negative 2 solution, and we will use the positive 2 solution. So t is equal to 2. That's my final answer, and number 16 equals 2. Excellent. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat, or you can DM me on Twitter at @totrainyourself2, and I'd be happy to answer your question on stream. Okay, next question. Number 17. A summer camp counselor wants to find the length x in feet across a lake as represented in the sketch above. The lengths represented by AB, EB, BD, and CD on the sketch were determined to be all of those lengths. Segments AC and DE intersect at B, and angle AEB and CDB have the same measure. What is the value of x? I'm trying to think of a strategy to solve this problem quickly, because on an SAT test, you don't have that much time. Okay. So what we're going to use here is proportional triangles. So I think it's going to be easier for me to just draw the two triangles separately and not try to draw it in this diagram form here. So we have triangle ABE, ABE, and we also have triangle BDC. BDC. So now let's use our geometry notation that angle D and E are similar. Angle E and angle D are similar. And at the same time, what is this called here? vertical angles. Okay. So angle B in both triangles are also the same. And that's because when you have two straight lines going through a single point, the angles on the opposite sides here are going to be the same. Okay, that's called vertical angles. Get rid of our little diagram there. And now let's put in our lengths. So AB is 1,800 feet. EB is 1,400 feet. BD is 700 feet, and CD 800. BD is 700, and CD is 800. And where is X? That's AE. So this is X here. Let's make sure we have all of our information correct. AB is 1,800, EB 1,400. AB, EB. Good. Okay, so first, because we have opposite angle B is 800 and X, so those are going to be proportional to each other. 800 over X. Those are proportional. Okay? And that equals... Oh, something else I wanted to point out before we go any further. If two angles in the triangle are the same, then that means that the third angle in both triangles also has to be the same. So like for instance, if this one was 80 and this one was 60, then that would be 140 and this one would be 40. So if these two angles are the same, 80, 60, this one has to be 42. So across from this angle is 1,400, or excuse me, we want to keep the triangles consistent. So if this 800 is on top here, we want to keep the 700 on top over here. 700 over 1,400 equals, we could call this one y. Y over 1,800. Now, we're not interested in solving for y, we're only interested in solving for x, so we would use this here, and I would cross multiply to get 700x equals 14 times 8 is there no calculator on this part? Yeah, still no calculator. So if I didn't have a calculator, I probably wouldn't do it like that. I'd just look and I'd say 700 is half of 1,400, so 800's here, x has to be 1,600. It's twice as much. So what is the value of x? I would say 1,600 feet. Check the answers. 1,600 feet. So the key point for this problem here is they told you that two angles were similar, so you had to be able to know that the sides across from them would be proportional. And then they also said that two lines intersect at point B. Segments AC and DE intersect at B, which means that this here is a vertical angle, and those are going to be the same. And so therefore, if two angles are the same, then that's enough to justify having a similar triangle, because like I explained, the third angle will be the same. And so when you have similar triangles, the lengths of the triangles will be proportional to each other. So you just have to find the corresponding sides, and to do that, you needed to label your angles properly. So segment CB is similar to segment AB because they're across from the same angle that are equal to each other. Okay? And so you need to be able to set that up and then work this ratio out here in your head, because doing the cross multiplication, you'd need a calculator for that. Or you do the long multiplication out. Okay, system of equations for problem 18. According to the system of equations above, what's the value of x? So we have worked one of these problems out before. But in order to work out a system of equations, x plus y equals negative 9, and x plus 2y equals negative 25. Now, there are two ways to solve this. You could do a substitution method, or you could do guess and check if you had some good math intuition here. So let's just try and think about what these numbers could be. If I had negative 14 and 5, yeah, that wouldn't work. So you can see I'm trying to make a guess and it didn't work. So since that didn't work, which would be the fastest way to solve the problem, then we need to do substitution. So let's solve for one variable or the other. Let's use this one because it's easier. We'll just subtract y onto the other side. So x equals negative 9 minus y. We'll substitute that in for x over here. So we'll get negative 9 minus y plus 2y equals negative 25. Drop the parentheses, negative 9, and combine negative y plus 2y is plus y equals negative 25. Plus 9 equals negative 16. So I was almost there with the negative 14. And then we'll plug negative 16 up here for y. And we'll ask ourselves what minus 16 is negative 9. That's going to be positive 7 minus 16 is going to give us 9. So x equals 7 and y equals negative 16. And I think they asked us for x, yep, which is 7 for number 18. And we got it right. So the biggest thing for a system of equations, find the equation that seems the easiest to solve. If there's no coefficient next to your variable, that's probably an easy one to solve because you don't have to divide. Like I'll show you, if I solved for y in this equation, I would have gotten 2y equals negative 25 minus x, and then I could divide by 2 and get y equals negative 25 over 2, not 3, 2 minus 1/2 times x. And this isn't the easiest equation to work with. I've got an improper fraction that I can't reduce, and I've got a fractional element times my other variable. And that's not as easy to substitute in as negative 9 minus y, which is really easy to substitute in. So whichever equation has the least amount of coefficients, definitely solve for that. And that'll get you through the problem the fastest. Okay, in a right triangle, one angle measures x degrees, where sine of x is 4 over 5. What is cosine of 90 minus x? Okay, let's set up our right triangle here. So we've got our right angle, we have x, and then we have 90 minus x. Okay, because the angles inside of a triangle are add up to 180. We have our right angle, that's 90, so these two angles are going to add up to 90. We have x, and 90 minus whatever x is the other angle. So it says the sine of x is 4 over 5. Sine of x is 4 over 5. If we know the definition of sine, that's going to be opposite over hypotenuse, right? So opposite of x is 4, and the hypotenuse is 5. So if we want to solve for this side here, we'll do 5 squared equals 4 squared plus b squared. 25, 16 plus b squared minus 16 from both sides. 9 equals b squared. Take the square root of both sides to get b equals 3. It's a 3, 4, 5 triangle. And then it asks for what is the cosine of 90 minus x. Cosine of 90 minus x. That's the cosine of this angle right here. And cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that means that it's going to be 4 over 5. So I would put 4 over 5, and the answer is 4 over 5, or 0.8. So when you see this cosine 90 minus x, don't think that you need a calculator for that. The 90 minus x, it's the most simplified way of expressing what this angle is. Since this angle is x, then this angle is 90 minus whatever this angle is. And so it's a way of generally writing it. And so if it's easier for you, you could say, okay, x degree equals angle A, and 90 minus x degrees is angle B. So you would rewrite this, what they're asking you, as what is the cosine of angle B. And you know that cosine is this, and you'll be able to get this answer. So if this way of writing it is confusing for you, then you have to have this understanding that this is the most simple way to write it, and then rewrite it in a way that works for you. Okay? Again, if you're in the chat, feel free to drop a question down there. And we're going to do one more problem here. If a is 5 square root of 2, and 2a is the square root of 2x, then what is the value of x? If a is 5 square roots of 2, and 2a is the square root of 2x, And what is the value of x? To get this number here outside of the radical, we took the square root of it. So if we want to put it back inside of the radical, then we will square it to get a equals the square root of 2 times 25, to get a equals the square root of 50. So if a equals the square root of 50, then 2a equals 2 square roots of 50. And to get this number outside of the radical, we need to put it back under the radical, we need to square it. So that would be 2a equals the square root of 50 times 4, which is 200. So 2a equals the square root of 200. And it wants it in the form of 2 times x, so we do 2a equals the square root of 2 times something, which is 100. And I would say 100, final answer, number 20, 100. So the key point here is, how do I manipulate roots and radicals? And to get something, like if I had the square root of 50, I could do square root of 50, rewrite that as the square root of 25 times 2. I can take the square root of 25 to get that out of the radical, and I'd be left with 5 square roots of 2. And then to put that back inside of the radical, I have to square it to get the square root of 2 times 25, which then I can multiply and simplify and do the square root of 50. So being able to take a number and factor it out, so that way you have a perfect square times a number, take the square root of the perfect square, take that outside the radical, and be able to do the reverse. Alright, that is our session for today. Thank you for stopping in, if you did. And if you'd like to work with me, send me a DM on Twitter at ToTrainYourself2, and we can work in this environment where I have this whiteboard, and if you have a tablet or even just a computer, you can be on this and I can watch you do all of your work and give you tips and feedback on that. So thanks a lot, everyone. See you next time.